This is Movers and Shakers, where we interview the upcoming generation of Make It Happen multifamily investors to share their story.
Welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Jake and Gino, multifamily investor, educator, father, mentor, and I'm joined by my co-host, Joshua Ryan Rusin, the community director of Jake and Gino. Josh, how are you doing today?
Gino, doing well, my friend. Just excited. Life's going good. Obviously, we closed on a deal. We got a couple more in the hopper, so that's always a good time to be crushing in real estate. And a lot of momentum in the Jake and Gino community as well. So I think that things are firing on all cylinders. What's going on in your world, Gino?
Well, Josh, we're getting signage on a 52-unit deal today. We're finally pulling that contract through. We closed on 85 units a couple of weeks ago. So it's been a busy season. I mean, I wish the deals were bigger. I'm not going to lie to you, but you know what? No deal. Remember that, Josh? Remember that thing? Think of that, what we always say at Jake and Gino, right? You got to just make it happen, number one. And number two, as far as the deals out there, we're always enticed into buying bigger deals, right? But think of it this way. If there's a deal out there that's a 20 unit or a 30 unit and it makes a ton of sense, just do it, right? No deal is better than a bad deal. If you're looking at a 100-unit deal and the numbers don't make sense, forget about it. Move on to the next one. And hey, listen, right now, small deals are out there. So that's what we're looking forward to. That's what we're taking down right now, Josh.
You know, Gino, I want to hammer on that point for a minute, because I think a lot of people get caught up and, hey, I got to do 300-400 units. And Gino, your first deal was a 25-unit deal. To date, how much money have you refied out of that deal?
Well, Josh, we put in $83,000 initially. We got 10% owner financing. We were able to refinance $165,000 out of that deal several years ago. But the important thing is it was only 25 units, but that deal is cash flowing for us $8,000 to $9,000 every single month. I only owed a third of that. But listen, it's $2,000 a month in my pocket every single month after I've taken all of my money out. At least. And my kids are going to college, right? That deal is paying for my children's college. My daughter just graduated 4 years. That deal helped me pay for her college. Now my son's up the deck. He's going to be a sophomore. That deal is paying for my son. So that one deal can be life-changing and transformational. And it was for me, and it was the roadmap. That's why I don't, as Jake says, poo-poo these smaller deals, because these smaller deals will give you the experience and they will get you into the bigger deals. Josh.
Boom. I think that puts it in perspective. But today I want to dive into our rockstar guest. So today on Movers and Shakers, we have Whitney Sewell. So Whitney's the founder of Bridge Capital LLC. He began his real estate investing career in 2009. Whitney's passion is working with investors, helping them secure financial security via the exceptional opportunities that multifamily syndication offers. Since 2017, Whitney and the LifeBridge team have acquired 900 doors and $150 million in assets under management. Whitney hosts the Real Estate Syndication Show, a daily podcast where he has now interviewed over 850 experts, providing cutting-edge tools and strategies of the syndication business. Whitney and his wife, Chelsea, are on a mission to help other families through the process of adoption. They have personally endured the financial burdens that the process puts on families and have committed 50% of their profits to this goal. Whitney and Chelsea have 3 children by adoption. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Whitney.
My pleasure, guys. Great to be here.
So, all right, let's take it back, to 2009. We're going 12 years ago. How did you get into real estate? Why did you get into real estate? Walk me through all of it.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick rundown, ask any questions, but I'll go back a little bit further and I'll go to March of 2001. And I say March because obviously that's the year that our nation was attacked, that September. But in March, I decided to join the military and ultimately just thought it was the right thing to do. I just, actually a good friend of mine and I joined at the same time. And 6 months later, our nation's attacked and we can tell that, okay, so it's probably going to get bad, right? We just joined the military and we found ourselves spending all of 2005 in Iraq. And, that was a massive learning experience for myself and my friend, that I went over with. We both went overseas together. But, unfortunately, not everyone in my squad made it home, from that year in Iraq. And I say that, the military, I'm so thankful the Lord allowed me to safely return home. And I say the military taught me to have that never give up mentality. And it's just not an option, to give up when you're in combat, right? Other people are depending on you to perform. And so that I just learned a lot. I mean, it was just a massive learning experience. Came home, I loved the structure, the discipline, the uniform, and decided policing was the route for me. And I got hired. There were 5 positions, 1,200 applicants. I was blessed to have one of those with Kentucky State Police. And the first couple of years, I would have worked for free. I loved working the road as a police officer. However, about a year in, I got married, and then the next year of first year of marriage, we just passed each other in the hallway, that whole first year. And I also discovered that, making about 30, 35 grand a year, it was going to be very difficult to support a family. And we wanted my wife to be able to stay at home, when we had children, and that was going to be difficult, right? I mean, on 30, 35 grand a year, working all the overtime I could and the worst schedule you can imagine. And so that was when I started looking for some other way to supplement our income. And that's when I found real estate. And I discovered that this is, around the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, I found out that, not only had like 1 or 2 people built wealth in real estate, but millions of people have built wealth in real estate. And so I thought, if they can do it, hey, I can do it too. So we bought 2 triplexes in 2009, made a ton of mistakes. I mean, just on and on, made a ton of mistakes. But thankfully, we learned a lot, and we didn't quit, right? We didn't quit there. But I then became a federal agent, and that's what moved us to Virginia, where we still live now. And so while being in Virginia, we sold the couple triplexes that we bought in Kentucky. We bought and sold some smaller properties, but my mindset was still like, find duplexes, find single family, find a fourplex. That was all that I could envision at that time. We got up to like a 15 unit, and I really thought that we were doing something. I thought, whoa, wait a minute, 15 units. And I just couldn't imagine anything bigger than that at that time. And it was really, believe it or not, Gino, you probably remember this. We've talked about it before, but that the first conference that you all had was the first conference that I ever went to. And I snuck in. Gino probably remembers this, but I snuck in, and one of the people on his staff let me in before anybody else. And Gino was up in front of the room pacing. He was pacing back and forth. I'll never forget. Nervous, right? This first conference. And the Lord just led me to go up and say, hey, Gino, can I pray with you? And it was just, I'll never forget it, getting to pray with Gino and getting to be the first one in the room. I sat right up front and center, and I met all these amazing people that were pushing to grow a large apartment business, right? Real estate business. And my eyes were open to like bigger things, right? During that conference, I was like, wait a minute, if not only had 1 or 2 people built businesses and, buying large apartment buildings, but many, many people have. And many of them have only been in the business a year or 2, and they're buying these large apartment buildings. So I'm like, if they can do it, guess what? I can do it too. And so then it wasn't long after that, yes, I hired a mentor and started a daily podcast, and through some other partnerships, now we've just done more than we could have imagined as far as closing deals and closing over 100 million just last year alone. But yeah, I know that's a long story, but that's a little bit of detail of how we got here.
I remember that first conference, and for everybody out there thinking about buying their first deal or doing their first raise or writing their first book, it's scary. Not going to lie to you. I don't know why I pushed through. I think one of the reasons why I ended up pushing through was I had Jake as a partner, and I didn't want to let him down. It's that accountability piece, right? And for me, a little emotional. For me, I remember that like yesterday, and it was scary. I remember sitting there going, I don't want to look stupid because I've got my family in the crowd. My cousin's there. He's looking at me going, what are you doing? And it's one of those things where you just got to commit and then figure it out, and it's okay. And I had a belief system. I think that's what God wanted me to do, and he's led me down this path. And everybody, it's not easy. It's something, life isn't easy, right? And if you take the easier path, you're going to be bored. And I've taken this path with Jake and Gino, and I've met so many amazing people. It's not even about the real estate. It's really about the connections and the network. And you're looking at Whitney's life and his thing. It's taken him a couple of years to get traction, right, Whitney? I mean, to get to that $100 million closed today, everyone's going to say, well, you're overnight success, but you've been doing this since 2009. You've been grinding away and working really hard. And it's a testament to that, right? You have to work really hard in the beginning, and you have to surround yourself with amazing people. Josh, I want to ask Whitney one thing. What were the big mistakes you made in the beginning that you would tell the listeners to avoid?
It seems so simple, right? But not having mentors, not having the people, not really having a network, not knowing someone that's way ahead of me. We bought 2 triplexes. I don't even know why the bank gave us a loan, honestly, at that time on this property, but they did. Somehow we made it happen. And I did not have good guidance. I did not have someone in my corner that had been there and done that I could go ask questions of and help me through that acquisition process and due diligence and working with the seller and those things. Those were some of the big, it seems simple, right? But still it happens every day. It did not have the network or just anyone really in my corner. That was probably the one big mistake, like 2009 time frame, where we could have done a lot better. I'm thankful now that it worked out like it did, right? Because we may have stayed there and kept doing that and not been where we're at now. But at that time, we just didn't have the experience on our team, anyone to ask questions of and talk to.
We have MM4 coming out October 23rd and 24th this year. It's the 4th event. And I tell everyone down below in the show notes, there's going to be a link for you to buy tickets. It's an amazing event. Whitney, I want you to sell me on why they need to go to the event, because that first event, it seems like it just catapulted you. It just seems like it changed everything for you. And it did for me too, because that was our very first event. And I learned probably more than everyone who was there. I mean, from the education, from the networking, from just meeting so many amazing people. What would you say to people saying, you know what, I don't know if I can afford to go to this seminar. I don't know if it's going to be worth my weekend. What would you tell them?
I would say you can't even imagine right now what you're going to get from a conference like that. Your eyes just aren't open to those things yet. You've not been exposed to those things yet, but just the people in the room, much less the people speaking, people that are going to help you expand your mind, your mindset and your thought process is just like you can't even put a value on that and what that piece alone does for you for many years to come. Like getting that growth, seeing people that have done it and really have been in your shoes just helps you to think through, wait a minute, again, if they can do it, I can do it too. Where do we get started? And you get that from a conference like that. You see that on stage. You hear people laying things out for you, and you meet people, maybe even future partners, that will help you to get there as well. And so there's things that happen there that you just don't even know. You can't even expect until you go and really apply yourself in a setting like that.
Love that. Whitney, at your level, do you still attend conferences like this? And if so, why?
I do. I can't say I'm traveling as much as I was at that time. So I went to that first conference, Jake and Gino, and then I was like at a different conference all over the country 2 or 3 times a month for like 2 years. And that takes a toll on the family, to say the least. And so I've scaled that back, yes, but I still go into conferences because it is so important. The network component, right? The networking and meeting people in the business and learning, educating. It's constant education, constant networking, constant relationship building. That's what the business is built on, right? It is the constant education and relationship building. And that's what happens at these conferences. And I love the in-person stuff. The virtual stuff, we've had to do that right for a good while now. But there is nothing like, seeing Gino in person and seeing Josh in person and shaking their hand and saying, how are you doing? Putting your hand on their shoulder and talking about their business or just thinking through what we've learned and helping one another. It's just, you can't get that virtually, but it's just a great part of conferences that I love.
Whitney, so it clearly was a sacrifice for you to go to these conferences for 2 years, but let me ask you, was that sacrifice worth it?
That's not even half of it. And let me add a little bit to that story. And so I was also, most people in the industry don't know this, but I was training horses professionally and I was doing clinics. I was actually building a brand around training horses, kind of like I did in the real estate business, not near to this level. However, I've become pretty well known. I was traveling to many different states and teaching hundreds and hundreds of people horsemanship skills. I've had numerous, every horse I sold, I can stand in the saddle and pop whips on both hands, or they lay down and I stand on top of them and do all kinds of tricks and crazy stuff, right? But, that business, that was a passion of mine since I was a little boy. And I was finally like seeing that happen, right? It was amazing. I still had rentals. I was still a federal agent, but it was like I had 2.5 full-time jobs. And my wife and I had the farm we had always dreamed of. as well. But when we were on the beach, and it was actually about the same time frame as Jake and Gino's conference, maybe right before that, we had gone to the beach, and Chelsea, my wife, and I, we were just praying, walking on the beach, thinking about, where do we want to be 5 years from now? Is what we are doing really what we see doing for many years? Can we really sustain this? And it was obvious we couldn't. I could not work that kind of hours forever. And so, at that time, we decided that the Lord just gave us both peace and decided to sell our farm. And we sold the farm. We sold every horse. We sold everything to do with that business. And that was very difficult for me because that was like this passion that I'd had since I was a little boy. And it was like, it was really coming true. I was selling horses for more money than I ever imagined and was building that name, but I knew it was never going to be passive. And I knew it was not what was best. So we sold that farm. We moved into a small house in town and probably not the best area of town. And I put up 2 walls in the corner of this basement. And that's where the podcast was born. That's where I lived for 2 years. It was in this. And so even though I was at home, my boys knew that they didn't see Dad until like Saturday afternoon and on Sundays. It was that ridiculous. So I would be taking investor calls from 5 a.m. to 7 until I went to work. I would get home. I would do more interviews, 4 or 5 interviews in the afternoon. I had 2 days off a month, off every Monday. And my team knew that I needed to record 12 to 15 shows, interviews back to back to back on those Mondays. And so it was just a massive sacrifice really for the whole family. And I often talk about my family as like hidden team members. And you don't hear people talk about that part of the team very often, but my wife worked just as hard as I did. She did everything for all of us in the house. And I could not have done it without her support, and it just would not have been possible. But massive sacrifice for her. And we had to say no to everything that we would have normally said yes to, even good things. Church events or things, friends that we wanted to spend time with. I had to constantly just have the mindset of, it's not going to be forever, but we have to say no to those things for a while, and had to keep painting that vision, for my kids as well. This is where we're going. We are going to be back out on a farm, but, we just Dad has to keep doing this, has to keep going, have to keep going. And we are back out on a farm now. And guess what? We got our first horse back this past weekend. It's just, it's amazing to see it happen. And it has been very well worth it. So I get that question often because it's been quite insane for about 3 or 4 years. But now I'm getting 2 dates a month with my wife now because I'm scheduling it. I'm saying this time is blocked off and more time with the kids as well. So it's very worth it. Now I'm more in control of my time than I've ever been.
Man, I like that. So, all right, one inflection point that we talked about prior to starting recording was kind of scaling a business, right? So people get their first deal and then they got a point where they just can't handle anymore. And Whitney, I think you shared some really great points on when you hit that point, how you were able to scale it and kind of what that looks like. Can you share with us how you did that?
Yeah. Everybody talks about scaling, right? And wants to scale. And I would even go back to doing the daily podcast. And everybody says, has it been worth it? I get that question. It goes back to systems and teams and processes. But it goes even further back to the mindset behind it, because if I had done a weekly show, I would have personally tried to have done it all myself. I would have tried to have edited the audio, the video, the show notes, and said, I'll get it done sometime through the week. It would have been halfway done. I probably would have gotten frustrated and quit. So, but knowing, like overcommitting and saying, I'm going to do this daily show, it made me build a team from the very beginning. It made me scale. Before we ever even launched this show, I had to have this team. And I had 4 virtual assistants from all over the world, including another VA in the States that helped me to manage all these people and make sure that we were, ahead of schedule. And we've done that different ways, over the last few years now. But it made me think differently, right? And then obviously over time, we've scaled, we've hired more people. We still have 4 full-time people in the Philippines, 5 in the States, and fixing to hire more. And so we're growing. But, one thing you and I, Josh, were talking about before we started recording was, it's like there's certain things that it's really hard to hand off to someone else. And there's certain things that I feel like, I have to do those things. I'm not sure that I really, certain things with investors or investor calls and whatnot that I really take very seriously, right? And these people expect to speak to me. However, when I think about, there's a limit to how many calls personally I can take a week. There is, right? We all have a limit. Like this is all I get done. And when I think about where I want to be a year from now or 5 years from now, how many investor calls do we really want? That's just one example of my calendar. But how many investor calls do I want coming in at that point? And am I really going to be able to take all those? Absolutely not. There's no way. And so why not go ahead and build those systems and teach, groom this person that's already in an investor relations position for me now? Why not go ahead and groom them now to start taking a few of those calls now? So when, our systems continue to grow, that they can continue to take more, right? And I can even take more of that off my plate. So it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. If you really plan to scale, you do have to trust team members. You do have to find those people that are Class A talent. I went through a big thing recently called top grading. If you don't have that book on your shelf, I highly recommend it, by Brad Spark. I probably used a third of that book, and man, it just really helped us in a big way for me to hire Class A talent as an executive assistant. And it's really paid forward. It takes a lot of work up front, but it's so well worth it. But it's helped us in many ways. But anyway, building the team is just a must. It's how fast you want to get there.
So Josh, do you mind if I just add a little bit to that? Because we did a podcast with a gentleman named Steve Robinson. He was a CMO for Chick-fil-A for 35 years. And he was talking about Truett Cathy and how Truett was a steward of his money. And what I loved about the company was they were into growth, but they weren't into growth in the traditional sense of putting on debt and outgrowing your infrastructure. They really started wisely. And this is what I think right now Whitney's discussing, he's talking about. You can grow and grow your infrastructure. You don't want to outgrow your infrastructure because that's what happens with problems. So You don't have to grow so quickly and think that that's what the ultimate goal is. Remember, revenue is vanity, profit margin is sanity, and cash is king. I think Truett, and I think that's what Whitney's discussing right now. Build your infrastructure. And as you build your infrastructure, don't outgrow it. If you're planning to buy 100 units this year and that's what your infrastructure can handle, don't go out and try to acquire 2,000 because you're going to really damage yourself. It's growing. I don't want to say the word slowly, but growing to whatever scale, whatever speed you can. And don't get caught up in the Instagram world where, hey, that person's doing 6,000 units. This one's doing 2,000 units. And I've only got 50 units over here. If you have a great 50-unit deal, great, but worry about your infrastructure and how you're scaling your business, whether it's a podcast that Whitney's discussing, whether it's a property management company, whether it's an asset management company, whether you're buying multifamily, single family, you have to worry about the infrastructure and continue to add team members. And that's a learning process, everybody. And you better be getting a business coach. You better be having somebody helping you out because we had traction. We've done scaling up. So we've done all that. We've invested tons of money for that because if you've never done it before, hey, you need somebody to help you out. And there goes the mentorship again. You can do it all by yourself and make tons of mistakes. Our coach, Bill Ham, is famous for saying, you're either going to learn in the classroom or you're going to learn on the street. Learning on the street is going to cost you a lot more than the classroom. I will guarantee you that because I've done that, been there. And also, when you're learning in the classroom or you're learning with a mentor, Josh loves to say, success leaves clues. Just follow somebody who's done it before. Follow somebody who's scaled the company up. Ask them about it. What about an org chart? I mean, something as simple as an org chart. If you don't have an org chart for all those VAs and all, it's going to be a disaster for you. But if you don't even know how to set one up, and if you don't even know what bucket you need to fill, it's going to be really hard for you to scale up. So don't outgrow your infrastructure is what I'm trying to say. And don't be afraid to get help from somebody.
Man, I love that. All right. So one thing to scaling, and I struggle with this, right? I struggle at the do, document, delegate, but I have a saying that really helps me put it in perspective. And it's imagine if Elon Musk had a hand deliver every Tesla. Now it's so obscure or so crazy that it sounds ridiculous, but at the same time, he'd never be able to grow the business he has. So when I think of it that way, it's like, all right, I want to help as many people here at Jake and Gino as we can. And in order to do that, I have to scale so I can serve more people.
Love that.
All right, Whitney, here's what I want to talk about. You were able to marry your passion for helping people with adoption, something you went through personally with business. I mean, let's talk about that process and how you're able to do that, because it's so much cool that it's cooler that you have a purpose with your business and you have such an impact on this process with people, something that you went through as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. And, when Chelsea and I moved to Roanoke, it was in 2011, and we knew of this pastor named David Platt, and we knew that he does this thing called Secret Church. And we went to that, and he was talking about caring for orphans and widows and how there's over 150 million orphans in the world, and how it can cost 40 to 60 grand to bring one home through adoption, and they had adopted personally. My wife and I had never been exposed to adoption before. We grew up in a one stoplight town. We didn't know anyone that had been adopted and never heard of it really. And so now, on our way home from this event, the only thing Chelsea and I could ask each other was, why would we not adopt? We couldn't think of a good reason why we wouldn't adopt. So it seems so simple, right? And we're thankful now for our ignorance, of the process at that time. But within a week, we turned in our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And 2 years later, to the month, our first son, Samuel, came home from Ethiopia. A year later, our second son, Elijah, came home through adoption. And then our daughter now, Eden Joy, has come home through adoption, and she's almost 2. And so our family has grown through adoption and been extremely blessed, but the process is very difficult. And the financial burden alone keeps most families from pursuing adoption, right? And we talk to families often who just have questions about our process, how we did it. And we welcome phone calls any way we can help families, get started in adoption or down to bringing their children home. But when they hear that expense, the what that's going to cost, many will say, well, Whitney, that's more than I'm making a year. And so it was our goal then to be able to help these families financially. And that's been our why and our mission from the very beginning. And so Chelsea and I knew we wanted to start this foundation where we can help financially fund the adoption process for families who can't afford it and really provide large grants to them. And so that whole mission, and let me say another point of that too, because I talk about how important my wife has been in this whole process. She's not into real estate. She's not into real estate. However, she is into our why and our mission. And she loves that about the business. And she's very passionate about helping these families. And so it's been really neat to see how the Lord's used that. So just last Friday, we were able to partner with our first 3 families. So we had some very large donations last year. And it's obviously that's a whole nother business, right? It's taken some time to get some of those systems and processes in place. But it's so neat to just play a small role in that piece where we're helping these families commit to bringing their children home. And we hope to have 3 to 4 more families over the next 2 weeks that we're going to partner with as well that are committing to bringing their children home. And so our foundation, the LifeBridge Foundation, is partnering with them to help in a big way with those with the financial burden, and so they can bring their child home.
Josh, the theme of this show should be, as our mentor Cole Hatter likes to say, it's his slogan: "Make money matter." I mean, that's basically what it comes down to, right? As an entrepreneur, Whitney is chasing opportunity. He's not chasing money. I mean, he's chasing money for what the opportunity holds for money, and he's using that money for the opportunity to help other families. So that is an awesome why. And one of the reasons why Whitney has, I want to say, held on for the last several years, because I'm sure this has been a very difficult road, being in that garage, in that basement, all by yourself for hours upon hours, talking to investors and not hanging out with friends, is because he had clarity. He didn't lack motivation. Most people lack clarity when they're trying to achieve something. He was strong enough. It wasn't only just about the money. It was about the mission that he put on himself. So I challenge everybody listening to this right now. You need to have a big enough why, and you need to know what your why is. And Whitney, I feel your pain. My wife could care less about real estate. She still doesn't understand what refi and roll is. She doesn't know what a cap rate is yet. It's okay. I'm not hating on her, but that's not her gig. But she totally understands what real estate and what Jake and Gino has done for our lives and for countless other families. And she's actually become a life coach from it. So your significant other doesn't have to be on board with the vehicle. They just have to be on board with why the family is doing it. And it's a testament to you to be able to share that with your wife and to be able to continue to chase that opportunity. And it's not just about the money. The money is great, but what can the money do for you ultimately with it? So it's an amazing testament. Thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Love it. Well, guys, listen, let's take a quick time out here to hear from our sponsors.
Gino, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. I know that you've been hard at work helping Jake and Gino students do just that using our framework. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
Guys, we've been hard at work growing our community of like-minded investors, and the results of our members has been nothing short of incredible. We're looking to grow this amazing group. What we're looking for is those who want to follow our proprietary framework that we've created: buy right, manage right, and finance right. Leverage our connections, education, and mentorship as ways to take your business to the next level.
So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become a part of our amazing community, apply to work with us at jakeandgino.com/apply.
All right, Whitney. So I have some short answer questions here for you. If you had to give your best habit for success, what would that be and why?
The best habit for success. If I had to boil it down, there's so many habits, right, that are crucial. Your habits just shape so much about who you are and what you accomplish and help you to, I mean, it's all those small consistencies over a long period of time that really add up to big things. But one thing that allows you to have better habits, I've found, and I found even from our show, that's very common. It's not every entrepreneur, but very common, is being up early, getting in bed early and being up early. And that's one, because you have to be up early to have other morning habits or morning routines and structure that time. You got to be up out of bed. Right. And so that habit alone, has changed everything for me. I love that morning time. It's a great time with just my wife and I. We're just spend time in the Word and read and pray together. It's a time where I can study. I'm reading other books, as well, just business, entrepreneurial stuff, whatever, constant education, right? And then just planning the day, not only for me and the business, but also for our family. And just talking with my wife about what's going on that day or for that week, those things. But that habit alone, so a few years back, almost the same time, maybe even before the conference with Jake and Gino, I was reading The Miracle Morning, and by Hal Elrod, and that helped me really think about being more purposeful about my morning. I don't do everything that he suggests, but I did take a lot from that, and just being up early and structuring that time has changed everything for me and my family.
Love it. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. Okay, so let's say I'm a brand new investor, right? I'm listening to the podcast and I want to get into multifamily, but I'm unsure of my exact next steps. What's the biggest tip you would give to that person listening right now?
We've talked about it. I mean, it's having a mentor, right? Finding people in this space that, and I say find somebody that like you want to be like them. A year, 5 years from now, whatever, like the way that they represent themselves is the way that you could see representing yourself. And so that, when I was finding a mentor, that was a big thing that was important to me. I wanted somebody that was in the business now. I wanted somebody that I could have direct access to. And then I also, how do they represent themselves? Are they 100% integrous? Do they, because you're associated with that person, right? In a big way. And so having that mentor is just crucial. Having someone, and Gino, it just hit the nail on the head too. It's like having that person that's been there. You're going to pay for that now, or you're going to pay double for it later, if not more, right? And so find that person, find that mentor that you trust, that's on your team, somebody that's ready to invest in you, in some way. It just gives you a whole nother level of confidence as well when you have that person that's in your corner.
Wow, Whitney, you really shed a lot of light on that one. I really like the perspective. How about the best book you've ever read and why?
The Bible just tells you everything you need to know about anything. I would say no doubt about it, spending time in the Word and with the Lord. Second to that, if I have to think about business books, and there's so many, that I could name, but I would say one recently that I've really enjoyed is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. I just did a solo podcast talking about Keith Cunningham stresses thinking time and the importance of thinking time. And he has a thinking time, like I think he says like 3 to 5 mornings a week. He has a thinking chair, like this chair and this tablet and this pencil are all for his thinking time. And he comes up with 3 to 5 questions that he is going to spend in thinking time. And then he talks about how he can rearrange the words and how he can, help himself just think of new solutions, right, to these problems, and just how important this thinking time is. And it made me even think about, when we were at the beach that time, like I was talking about earlier, like that was thinking time, right? We were thinking, we were asking questions, my wife and I, and trying to figure these things out. But if we had just stuck in the just grind and never really stepped back and thought about what's happening and think bigger picture and ask some questions, some hard questions, like we may not have made any changes, And so that's a book that recently I've really liked. After every chapter, he has a thinking time, and it gives you some questions to think about. And I think it's been very useful.
Man, that's good. I'm excited to read that book. All right, so Whitney, Gino, this has been an amazing episode, and I got to reflect on a huge theme in the show that really stands out to me. He followed the Jake and Gino slogan: education times action equals results. You look at Whitney's journey. He went to conferences, he hired a mentor, he got educated, and he took massive action. He got massive results, and the formula works. Gino, what other takeaways do you have to add to this?
Josh and Whitney, it's March of 2001. Whitney decides to join the military. Probably not the best timing in the world, but that's where his passion led him. I think that's where the Lord led him. September, we all know what happened, 9/11. 2005, he finds himself in Iraq. And that is a huge, I think, learning lesson for anybody in that experience. It's all about not making excuses. It's all about executing. And it's all about accountability. You can't let the person down to your left or to your right, or they're dead and you're dead. Business is a lot easier than that. So if you can survive in that environment, then you can survive in any environment. In 2009, he decides to start buying a couple of triplexes, becomes a Kentucky state trooper, only making 35 grand a year. And he says to himself, I can't support my family this way. I love the job. I would do it for free forever, but I can't do that now. And, it's the Mark Twain quote that says, it's not what you don't know that'll get you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And I think at that point, Whitney just knew that, hey, I only can buy triplexes and quads, and that's what I know. But he didn't know the power of syndication. He didn't know the power of scaling up. And he just stuck with it, continued to pray, and continued just to think about what his path was like. Ends up in November of 2017 sneaking into a conference, and he gets through that conference, continues to scale up, continues to change other people's lives. And he's here today, closing on $100 million worth of real estate. And I think the takeaway from the whole entire story is it's not going to happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. It takes time. It takes time to build your why. It takes time to build your skill set. But Whitney's built an amazing skill set that he can translate, and that can become generational. He can teach his family, his friends, and he can teach others. And he's building an amazing community. So, a testament to Whitney to continue to work hard. So just want to thank him for being on the show.
Yeah, Whitney, listen, you were awesome, man. How can the listeners get a hold of you?
Thank you, guys. Gino, always a pleasure. I just have the utmost respect for you and your team, and Josh. And anyone can reach out to me, lifebridgecapital.com. You can email me personally, whitney@lifebridgecapital.com.
I want to thank you for being an amazing guest on the show and sharing your movers and shakers story. And guys, listen, if you like this show, please leave us a review. And until next time, let's make it a movers and shakers week. See you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.